Um, so thanks for joining us. Impact February is an initiative we run every year. Um, After Christmas and January and the busy start of the new term, we always think it's quite good to spend the shortest month of the year trying to sort of re-kickstart the habit of impact, because that's the sort of key ethos behind Impact Integrators, our online training program, is to try to stop seeing impact as this add-on after a project is completed and to start integrating it into your approach to research. And that's a lot easier said than done. It takes a really long time to change your approach to the way you do something. And it does require practice. And so we started this initiative to sort of help nudge people and encourage them to carve out a little bit of time in their diary to think about impact, because it does require exactly that, a lot of self-reflection and interrogation, and to think about exactly why you do what you do and what you want to get out of it. That's a lot of what thinking about impact can actually achieve. So we've been sending out some resources and tips each week via our emails and our LinkedIn posts. I'm sure you've been following along if you're joining today. And today's little resource is this free webinar in which we're going to give you a free preview or teaser of one of the courses of Impact Integrators. So this course is called Building Your Impact Network. It's one of 2 new courses that came out last year. So there are now 4 courses of Impact Integrators, which together create what we believe to be the foundations of impact. So I thought I'd kick off with this quote from our founder, Saskia. Impact cannot be achieved in isolation. Change is a collective endeavour, and you will need to work together with a range of colleagues within and beyond academia. I think this is why I thought the networking course would be a nice one to start with, one of these free webinars, because it's really something that we do in every single introduction to impact workshop. Almost every single workshop that we do with academics in person is we really get them to first start to think about the people, first of all, the people they will want to have an impact on through their research and who they will need to work with in order to have an impact on those people, who they will need to work with just to do the research in the first place, and then who they'll need to engage with, interact with, in order to start translating those findings into impact. But before we begin, as Saskia says in the course, slow down. This is not to encourage you to sort of rapidly and manically network with everyone who you think might be vaguely relevant to your research. And impact, as I said, it's a very sort of long-term endeavour, and it's delivered over a number of years. And we would encourage you to think about networking with, think about it with a very sort of thoughtful approach and with longevity in mind. And that is the goal of this course, is to not sort of do a sort of hurried, rushed approach, but to really sort of be considerate and thoughtful in your approach. So I thought I'd introduce today a very simplified version of an exercise that we do in a lot of the workshops we do across the country. And this exercise isn't actually part of this Impact Integrators course. This is something a little bit different for the webinar today, but something that we usually do with researchers who, a lot of the time, especially early career researchers, may have actually feel like they work on their own in their research. It can feel a little bit intimidating to think about having this whole network of people around your research and not really knowing where to start and how on earth do they reach these people that they want to have an impact on. That can be quite intimidating in the beginning. One way that we do that is to try and categorize the different people that you will need to engage with and work with. And this is a really useful exercise to do as soon as possible, because it can really affect how you plan for impact and crucially how you plan for evidence collection. That comes later. But if you start with this, then it'll sort of put in place the steps you will need to be methodical with your impact and to think about how often do I need to be engaging with these people? How do I go about that? So as I said, this is a very simplified version because this is a very short lunchtime webinar, and we go into this in a lot more detail in our workshops, and we have a whole exercise around it. But just for your benefit today, I thought I'd go through these categories before we do our reflective exercise in a moment. So The first category is your research enablers. So this is the people who enable your research to happen in the first place. And those might be research funders, councils, academic partners, and non-academic partners, research participants. So who do you need to make your research happen? Secondly, this is a really key one, and sometimes we need to come back to this category after we figured out who the beneficiaries and the end users are. You sort of have the people who enable your research, you have the people you want to have an impact on, but sometimes you don't know how to make that gap, how to jump that gap. How do you get there? Who's going to help influence people to take up and adopt your research findings? Who's going to persuade them? Who's going to help you translate your research into something that can be used by someone else? Who's going to help facilitate that networking and help connect you with the person you want to reach? So this is a very, very key category that can sometimes be overlooked. But if you don't have these impact enablers, then quite often you can just be disseminating your research and it falls flat and you can't reach those people you really want to reach. So it's one that I really wouldn't overlook, and I would definitely keep in the back of your mind of who's going to help you get there. Because, as I said, these people may be really crucial for progressing your impact from sort of pure dissemination activity to actual uptake and adoption of your findings. And then finally, of course, you've got the end users and beneficiaries. Who is your research going to have an impact on? There are lots of categories of beneficiaries, and it's very hard to be exhaustive in a list when you list them. And I also wouldn't want to be too prescriptive of who beneficiaries could be either, because they are so varied. And the people you could have an impact on are very varied. So they may be, depending on your research discipline, they can be industry partners, patients, local community groups, charities and civil society organizations, supranational organizations, healthcare trusts and hospitals. They can be schools, schools, pupils, or educational organizations, professional bodies, and government departments. In preparation for today, I was quite curious as to who were the sort of most common beneficiary groups from the last REF, looking at REF impact case studies. So this is taken from the RAND report. So some analysis was conducted of REF 2021 impact case studies. So if you're curious, you can see who were the sort of main beneficiaries of these impact case studies. And you can also see it here disaggregated by panel, if you're familiar with what the different panels are in the REF. So I thought that might be quite an interesting one to include here. And as part of this exercise, what we've always noted is that people can belong in more than one impact network category. So your beneficiary might also be someone who participated in your research. And so they were also a research enabler. You may find that colleagues within your university, your impact managers, or the research support department may have actually been a research enabler and an impact enabler. There are all sorts of individuals and organizations who can exist across these different categories. So whilst we present them as separate categories, they are by no means exclusive. So the next exercise is going to be taken from the course itself. As I mentioned, what I've just shown to you now is something that we tend to do in workshops, and what we like to encourage is for people to plot out these different categories and really start to populate them with their enablers and their beneficiaries. But this is something for you to do further down the line. I'm going to now strip this all back, so forget about the different categories, and we're going to set a timer. I'll set a timer for about 3 minutes. And what we'll do is I will turn off my camera, but we'll come back here in 3 minutes after I've described what the exercise is. And I want you to just carve out this time, have a pen and paper or your laptop, and you're just going to make a list. So it's very simple. And I think you can do this exercise. I'm also going to do it could do this exercise whether you're a researcher or not, because I think it's actually one that's quite beneficial for everyone. And it sounds very simple. And as I said, try not to think about the categories that we've just mentioned. I've brought those up today because I think it's quite handy for you to think about if you are going to do this course or think more about your impact network. That's a quite helpful tool if you like to categorize. But this exercise is very simple. I want you just to spend 3 minutes noting down a list of people who share your interests and who would you like to be involved in a project with, whether that's because you're excited by the idea of being in a project with them, or you believe that together you can really make an impact from your work. So spend a bit of time and thinking about that. They can be someone inside or outside academia, that really doesn't matter. It's just simply someone, think about some of the beneficiary groups we just came up with there and how diverse they are. These people might be head of a community group, might be a politician, an engineer. It really could be anyone, but someone crucially who shares your interests and who you would like to be involved in a project with. I'm going to start the timer and I will pop my camera off. If you're not doing the exercise, go make a cup of tea and come back, and I'll be here in 3 minutes. So yeah, 20 past 12, and we'll reconvene then. So good luck. Okay, that was 3 minutes. I'd be really interested actually in the chat if you thought that 3 minutes went quickly or slowly, because I actually did the exercise and that went very fast for me. So yeah, do share in the chat what your thoughts are on that. Great, and it'd be really clear. It'd be really interesting to know as well whether finding time for impact is something that you have difficulty with. Great. So you've actually just done exercise 1 from the course, Building Your Impact Network. There are 10 films in total to the course, so each 2 to 3 minutes in duration. So exactly what you've just experienced, but 10 times, except that you've done the first one, so there's only 9 left. And we've also noticed with people before that there can sometimes be quite a burst of activity in the beginning of doing a course, and then you lose momentum. It doesn't become sustainable to do that as part of your daily work. So if you are going to do the course, we normally recommend just booking that time in, even if it feels ridiculous, booking in 3-5 minutes in your calendar. I know how busy calendars can get. As I mentioned, there self-reflective exercises, particularly in this course. So it's really, we always describe it as more of a coaching approach rather than training approach, because impact is it's very hard to, there are key principles and general principles that will work for everyone, but it's also very case by case. Your research is unique and your impact will be unique. And it also needs to be something you're passionate about, and you'll have more success with impact if you're following something that you feel really passionately about, and it will come a bit more easily as well. So it really needs to come from you. Unfortunately, nobody can tell you exactly what your impact should be. We can give advice and say, actually, well, this sounds like it could, you could actually have you can engage with policymakers and have some, policy impact. But if that doesn't interest you, then you're never going to keep it up and to follow it through. The course also includes a workbook to help structure your thoughts. If you're like me, I tend to scroll things everywhere and then lose things. So that's really helpful to have something all kept in one place. Sort of the typical learning outcomes for this course are that you will have identified who your work could have an impact on, so your beneficiaries, and who can help you reach those people, so your impact enablers. It also thinks about principles that you should keep in mind when you're approaching creating your impact network. So Saskia talks a lot about reciprocity. And, there's a sense that once you've identified these people, it's all people that you need data from, people you need evidence from, people that you need something from. And you'll get a lot more out of networking if you can also give back to these people as well. So she discusses some of these principles, so reciprocity being one of them. And then by the end of this, hopefully, similarly to what we've just done today, you'll have practiced habits to grow your network in a sustainable way. That's something we always come back to, is trying to make impact work something sustainable and something that is more manageable as part of your ordinary approach to your work. And this month, we're also able to offer a discount code. So if you are going to enroll onto the course, you can use this code here, ImpactFeb20, and you'll get a discount off the course price. If you've done an Impact Integrators course before, you may have been with us in the sort of legacy way that we did things, which was always using cohorts and booking through institutions. But now we've tried to simplify things as much as possible, so individuals can just book on themselves through our website. And we have, but if you are going to go through your institution, through your impact manager, they can book cohorts of 10 learners at a time, and those we have specific start dates for. So we've got one coming up in March and another one in May. Whether you book through a cohort or as an individual, all learners have access to the course for 8 weeks. So we sort of toyed around with access times and we really sort of studied and analysed how people tend to access the courses, and sort of the flow of how much focus they're able to give them. And we thought that 8 weeks is enough time to sort of allow you the space to organise how you do the course, but also to give it a bit of a deadline as well. And as a reminder, this is just one of 4 courses that are available. So if you are new to Impact, you might want to start with integrating Impact into your everyday, to learn the sort of key principles of Impact. If you liked today's exercise and you'd like to sort of follow this thread through in more detail, you can do the Building Your Impact Network course. If you're applying for a grant and you need to include Impact in your grant proposal, we have a course for that. And then a very popular new course is Evidencing Engagement and Impact. If you have been sort of developing your impact for a while, this is a very key problem area for a lot of researchers, is deciding how to evidence it and then how on earth to collect that evidence and how to ensure that it is robust. So that's the course we recommend if you're in that position. Well, thank you very much for joining, everyone. And whether you do the courses or not, I wish you the best of luck with your impact work.